troubleshooting remote desktop connections to an Azure virtual machine. So RDP connections to your Windows-based virtual machine can fail for various reasons, leaving you unable to access your VM. Issue can be with RDP service on the VM or network connections or the RDP client on your host computer, right? So in this section, I'm going to talk about most common methods to resolve RDP connection issues, right? Quick troubleshooting steps. So first step, reset RDP remote desktop configuration, right? And then next step is check network security group rules or NSG rules, right? Inbound security rule. We can also review VM console logs. Let me quickly spin up a Windows virtual machine so that I can also show you from where you can do you can perform these troubleshooting steps. I mean, like from where you can reset RDP configuration, how you can check network security group rules, review VM console logs, or resetting the NIC for the VM, or checking resource health, reset your password in case if you have forgotten password, or restarting virtual machines. So for that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to spin up a Windows virtual machine. It's real quick deployment. So most of the option, I'll be selecting default here because objective is to show you troubleshooting steps. Means you have a spinned up virtual machine, but you are unable to take RDP access, right? So there is some issue with the RDP. So that's what we want to troubleshoot here. So username, password, the same, and also I want to show you a very important option here on this tab. So networking tab, so I'm okay with the default virtual network, default subnet, public IP address, right? You don't want to change anything on this page. Defender for cloud is enabled and monitoring. So look at this boot diagnostic option, right? Boot diagnostic. So by default, enable with managed storage account. Even in case if you disable boot diagnostic at the time of spinning virtual machine, so you can enable boot diagnostic later on. So that's not a problem. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to enable boot diagnostic because it's another like troubleshooting step, boot diagnostic and serial console, right? So just click here, review and create. So um, it's almost done, verification. So let this be completed, then I'm going to explain like different troubleshooting steps. And after each troubleshooting step, try reconnecting to the VM, right? For example, after remote RDP configuration reset, like try reconnecting to the VM. Not successful, then check the network security group, console logs, reset NIC, like even you can restart the virtual machine and finally redeploy the virtual machine, right? So deployment is in progress. So let me go back to this notepad file. So the fourth step here is still problem not resolved, then reset the NIC network interface card for the VM, right? And I will show you how you can perform these steps. Also, you should check the VM resource health, right? Resource health, and then reset So VM password, right? Restart VM, and finally, still not resolved, then redeploy VM virtual machine. So there are total 8 steps, in fact, right? So you can just like follow step by step. So first thing first, and first one is what? Reset RDP configuration, right? So basically this troubleshooting step resets the RDP configuration when remote connections are disabled, Windows firewall rules are blocking RDP, right? And from where we do all this, like like reset RDP configuration. So select your virtual machine in the portal, and then uh, I believe in the help section, just near bottom of the list, there we get the option to reset like password and also reset RDP configuration. So let's see whether launch is successful, complete. So go to resources. So I'm going to show you from where you can uh, do this reset RDP configuration, right? And you understand what we are doing, like we were just troubleshooting. Remote desktop connection means like you have successfully spinned up virtual machine, but you are unable to take RDP of Windows machine, right? So step by step, we are going to understand like different steps here. So even if you look at this option, so virtual machine agent status is not ready, but it's not a problem. So very soon, like this message, warning message will be disappeared from here. So now if you want to like perform the first step, reset RDP configuration, remote desktop configuration. So select the virtual machine like VM 01, and then navigate to help tab here. Here we go, help, right? This one. So select the virtual machine and then help. And here, like we have the option like reset password. Look at this option, right? Click reset password. On the same page, we get both the options. Even in case if you want to reset password or you want to reset configuration only, right? So see here, there are two options: reset password, reset configuration only, right? So if we want to reset configuration only, just click here, reset configuration only, and then click here, update, right? So first step, this. Step number two, check network security group rules. So basically what is NSG or network security group rules? So it's basically a stateful virtual firewall, NSG, right? Stateful virtual firewall. And what do I mean by stateful? Stateful means if request packet is allowed with the security rules, so reply packet allowed automatically by default. So it's very different than like the network access control list that we create on Cisco devices, routers, or maybe somewhere else. Like you must have seen like access control list, because access control list is stateless, right? So we create two different security rule, or rather I would say access control entries, one to allow request packet, another for reply packet. But here in Azure Cloud NSG is basically what? Stateful. Stateful means if it's a virtual machine, right? And here a virtual firewall like network security group associated with its NIC card, network interface card, right? And if the outbound security rule, let's say permits HTTP or maybe DNS or any traffic, and inbound security rule deny everything, right? But still no problem at all, right? Why? Because if the first packet, request packet, is allowed with the outbound security rule created in network security group, so rest assured reply packet will be allowed automatically. You don't have to write down any rule there, right? So network security group is very much like a stateful firewalls, virtual firewall, right? Virtual firewall. So whenever we spin up a virtual machine in the cloud, right? and Windows virtual machine. So by default, our outbound connections are allowed, right? Allowed with the network security group, NSG. And NSG is linked with, attached with network interface card. Even we can also attach NSG with subnet, right? And what about the inbound? Like inbound security rule means if the first packet, inbound means like the first packet, I'm not talking about reply packet. If the first packet coming from internet side, right? So handled or matched with the inbound security rule. So by default, RDP is allowed by default TCP port 3389, but only RDP, right? No ping, no SSS, nothing. So in most of the cases, we don't face any problem because if by default RDP is allowed, so there is no problem at all. But in case if let's say you have created your own network security group and you forget to create security rule to allow RDP, then yes, step number 2 is also very important. Otherwise, by default, inbound security rule is created that allows inbound what? Inbound RDP. Let me quickly show you how you can verify that first, and then I'll be explaining this option. Like in case if, because it's not only about the RDP connection, even like we can use uh, a very good tool here in Azure, like Network Watcher, and then there we have the option to like this IP flow verify to check whether there is any security rule to allow traffic or not. I'm going to show you that, but hang in there. But before that, let me quickly show you the default security rules inbound and outbound, right? So if you go to the networking tab here of the virtual machine, yes, we know like unsaved data will be lost. So here, like if you look at this network interface card VM0136 effective security rule, and just below this option here there are two options: inbound security rules and outbound security rule, right? In networking section. Okay, and this is what your network interface card, NIC, network interface card. Even we can click here to check the effective security rule is another very good option here in Azure. And if you look at the inbound security rule, right, automatically created inbound security rules. So there are total four security rules. 65,500, 65,501 is a sequence number preference, because you understand, we know that security rules or access control lists are always matched from top to bottom, right? And if there is any match, then no further examination or evaluation is done, right? So you'll have to be very careful about the sequence number, right? And by default, like the security rule created here uh, has been assigned sequence or priority 300 RDP, port number 3389, protocol TCP, source any, and destination any. And what is action here? So let me scroll right. So you just see here the action is what? Allow. So by default, RDP is allowed, and no matter from which source the packet is coming from, source is any. Even we can create restrictive inbound security rule, no problem. And just below this, you see here like there are three other security rules, right? 65,001, 65,500 allow VNet inbound, right, between like virtual network to virtual network. So we'll see this like use of this security rule in VNet peering, right? The next one is like for Azure load balancer, in fact, and then implicit deny. Anything else like this is denied. And even when we create inbound rule, let's say we want to modify this, then here sequence number, like the sequence number that we use here, like is I mean like I cannot use, like let's say if I try to use sequence number 65,005, and see here the sequence number 100 to 14096, That means we cannot create any network, we cannot create any inbound security rule with the sequence number or priority higher than 4096, right? So I hope you understand. So these three will remain at the bottom, in fact. So whatever security rules we create, obviously will be on top of these three rules. Like the last one is deny all inbound, and these two with the permitted statement. If VNet to VNet, and one is with the load balancer. And what about the outbound security rule? So outbound security rule is again by default like allows everything, no matter all connection, right? Any and destination is internet, source any, port any, protocol any allow. And NSG is like stateful. So if outbound connection allowed, so responses or reply messages will be allowed automatically on the basis of connection state table that is maintained by this virtual firewall. So we don't have to worry with that. So I hope you understand this point, right? So by default, there is no issue. Even if I try to take RDP of this virtual machine, so definitely is going to be successful. But just I'm trying to show you like different troubleshooting steps in case if you have get into this similar kind of issue, like you are unable to take RDP of virtual machine, or not only RDP, even like maybe some other connections, some different communication protocol. So you can follow this step-by-step method. So how we can verify this, right? In production network, let's say your network security group has like so many like inbound and outbound security rules. So is there any like way to quickly verify like whether traffic would be allowed or denied? Like can we simulate? I mean, so yes, for that, like here, like we have the option that is um, IP flow verify, right? And that you will get here in network watcher, right? It's very good troubleshooting in Azure portal. And if you scroll down to network diagnostic tools here, right? So network diagnostic tools, and the very first option here, IP flow verify. The next one is NSG diagnostics, and the third one is again very very important. And mainly we use the third one next up to like find out any routing issue. So let me quickly show you this IP flow verify. Right. So this IP flow verify is like good option here, and it checks if a packet is allowed or denied from a virtual machine based on five tuple. And five tuple means source IP, source port, destination IP, destination port, and protocol TCP, UDP, or ICMP. So there are five tuple information, right? So select your subscription, resource group, virtual machine already selected, network card is selected, right? So my subscription, resource group, virtual machine, network card, and here like five tuples. So the first one is like protocol, TCP or UDP. So obviously TCP, and then like inbound or outbound. So we want to check like inbound security rule. So local IP, local port. So if I select here 3389 and remote IP, so if like you want to give any IP here, then you can just type 000 any IP address and any port number from the range, of course, like 1 to 65,535. So basically, what it's doing is simulating, right? What if any packet coming from any IP, sourcing with any source port and destination IP 10004 means obviously the public IPs. We are using here private IP, but you understand when we spin a virtual machine, so both like one private, one public IP, both IPs are assigned, right? So obviously we are not going to RDP to this private IP, but that NAT is done automatically in the cloud. Public IP is automatically translated to private IP address, and then the port number 3389, and fifth information is protocol. So now it's a kind of like in Cisco ASA we have like packet tracer, so similar to that. Even in Palo Alto we have command test security policy. So we just like match with security rules. So very similar to that here we have this option, very good option, IP flow verify, access allowed. So there is no issue with the network security group. right? What if I change this port? Like let's say I want to check SSH, whether SSH is allowed. No, not allowed. Let's see what output we get here, because we know like with the inbound security rule only RDP is allowed, not SSH. And look at this option here. Access is denied. Access is denied. Security rule, and this is the rule name. Deny all inbound. And even on the same page, we can also check the like routing. Is there any routing issue? I mean, uh, generally, what happens when we spin up virtual machine in the cloud, right? Azure portal, especially when we spin up virtual machine. So a system generated route or system route is created by default, right? And system route means like any network address, any subnet mask, and next to internet. Internet means like internet gateway. Next to internet or internet gateway, right? So this is the default route mainly used for internet connectivity. By default created, right? So generally there is no issue. But yes, we can modify with the help of user-defined route. We can create user-defined route. We can attach user-defined route or associate with the subnet, and then even this route may become invalid even, right? And sometimes we do that, right? So can we also verify routing issue? Yes. So select here free trial, source group, virtual machine, network interface card, source IP, and let me put any IP address here, 888, right? And just I want to check like, is there any matching route here? What if there is actual packet in fact coming from this IP destined to 888? So what is the next hop, right? From the routing table, what I'm expecting next hop as internet, right? And so this is to rule out any routing issue. So if we get here next hop as internet, that means routing wise there is no issue. So no issue with security group and there is no problem with the routing. So that's what I'm expecting here. So it's taking time and here we go. So look at this option here. Very good tool here. So next hop, internet. And what about routing table, system route, system generated route? So this way we can rule out any routing issue. So I hope you understand this second option also. What about the third option? Review VM console logs or boot diagnostic, right? So this troubleshooting step reviews the virtual machine console logs to determine if the VM is reporting an issue, right? But if boot diagnostic is not enabled, so this like will not show anything, right? However, that can be enabled even later on. So you want to enable boot diagnostic after this spinning up virtual machine, that is also possible. But if you remember, so at the time of spinning virtual machine, what I did, I enabled boot diagnostic, right? So how we can use this option, in fact, from where we get this option. So let me quickly go back to this portal and just home and select the virtual machine. We have just spinned up virtual machine 01, and here I'm looking for boot diagnostic option, right? Boot diagnostic options. So we'll get this in help section here. There are two options, right? Boot diagnostic and also serial console, right? So let me start with this boot diagnostic option. So, but serial console is also there. So here we get both options, right? Boot and serial console. Okay. So if we just click this option, boot diagnostics, so it will show the screenshot, right? And see here. So booted up machine, right, properly, because we can see like here, press Control Alt Tilt to unlock, and then also we can download the log message from here, download serial log, right? And what about the serial console then? Click here serial console and make sure that boot diagnostic is enabled. If boot diagnostic is not enabled on the virtual machine, so you'll not get this option. So it's preparing console connection to VM01. So it's very similar to like the console cable that we use to connect uh, networking devices, firewalls, right? So when we do that, right? So whenever there is any issue, let's say you have a device like, or maybe a network router or firewalls or any other device, load balancer, right? And you don't remember the management port IP address, or maybe you have forgotten password, or you want to do factory reset. So what generally we do, we connect the device with serial console cable, right? Serial console cable. It's not network port, right? And where we connect the serial console cable to the computer, like USB port, or maybe in traditional, like earlier days, we used to connect to COM1 or COM2 serial ports, and that's where like the name like came from, serial console cable, right? So this way, like we perform a lot of diagnostic steps. In fact, in Cisco routers, even we use the serial console cable to reset the password, and maybe to reset the device to factory default. In Palo Alto also F5 load balancer. So like it's very rare. Generally, we use this serial console cable or serial port or this console port. Either the very first time when we start doing configuration, initial configuration, or maybe at the time of diagnostic or troubleshooting. So very similar to that here in Azure Cloud also we have this option, and it's saying like the CMD is now available. So type here CMD, and then a new channel has been created, and now you can press tab and escape key, right? Tab and escape key from your keyboard. So what I did first, like I typed this CMD and then tab plus escape key, and now wait here. Now use any other key to view this channel, and let me enter and set. I skipped username, so probably will ask again one more time. So here we need to mention username. So type again CMD, new channel created. So what I did, I pressed enter key twice, in fact, right? So here, like we need to log in with the virtual machine username and password, right? And this way, we'll get into CLI mode of virtual machine. So we can perform, I'm here, Azure admin username and domain not there, so it's just a standalone server. Leave this field blank, hit down enter, and then the password, right? So now we can use CLI for troubleshooting purpose, right? So yes, CLI. Even if you want to check the IP address, you can run command ipconfig here. You can change the directory. You can see the directory. You can, if you want to ping, you want to test like internet connectivity from here, you can do that. You can run reset command, right? So you can use CLI or command line interface for troubleshooting, right? Because in Windows, uh, even we perform a lot of troubleshooting from CLI also. So I hope you understand this option, like how we can, we can get into CLI mode of it. So that's the way how we can, like, but condition here is what? Condition is like VM diagnostic, boot diagnostic must be enabled. If boot diagnostic is not enabled, then you cannot perform that, right? So that's the way, like how we perform this. So let me go back to the next step. Step number 4, reset the NIC for the virtual machine. NIC is like a network interface card, right? So I'm going to show you how to reset the network interface for this Azure Windows virtual machine to resolve issues when you cannot connect to like this VM, right? So basically, uh, we can like assign a static IP. We can disable and enable this NIC card, and how from where we can do all this, perform all this step. So from network interface card properties. So either we can go to the networking first and then select network interface after VM, then IP configuration. Let me show you that also. So if you have not seen any time, so select your virtual machine and then networking tab, right? Locate network interface card. There is only one network interface card, VM 0136. And then here we find the option IP configuration, IP configurations, and then it's taking time. And then here is IP configuration and IP address is 10.0.0.4 is like dynamic IP, right? So even we can, if we want, then we can make it static like this way, static IP. So same 10.0.0.4 is now static IP address. You can also disassociate or associate, and then here uh, and even if in case if you think that okay, maybe this is because of some other issue, and then look at this option here. The moment you change the IP, virtual machine associated with this network interface will be restarted to utilize the new private IP address automatically, right? So that's the way like how you can do reset. I mean like just change the IP, any other IP address, and then automatically this will be restarted, right? The network interface will be re-provisioned and network configuration setting this, right? So if you change the IP like static and then maybe 10.0.0.5, right? And then save here. So now virtual machine will restart to initialize the new NIC to the system. Right, so wait here, it takes time, and the drawback is what like uh, this virtual machine is reinitialized, right? So check this until the time. Let's not waste here. The fifth step is check the VM resource health, right? So simply you can just go to this virtual machine and then the resource health, and it shows like uh, basically it resource health watches your resources and tells if you if it's running as expected or there is some issue, like, right? And because very rare, but this may happen with like Azure cloud also, that some internal issue, backend issues, I mean like the known issues with the Azure platform. And even I witnessed one of the issue like a few days before, like there was some issue with the portal for a very short period of time. So to know that like whether there is any known issue with the Azure platform that may impact your connectivity or not. So the best place is like just select your virtual machine, and it's just let me open a duplicate page so that we can just go through this option also. So in the same like help section, we get the option. So just select your virtual machine, right? So still getting initialized, no problem with that. We are not bothered with that. So go to help, and notification is showing how much amount left with this free trial account. So help and then resource health. Just click here, resource health, right? So on this page, and see, a resource health watches your resources and tells if it's running as expected. We are currently unable to determine the health of this virtual machine. Why it is so? Because still virtual machine is like booting up, right? So will return to this page after a while, and then they will find like that everything is up to the mark. I mean like there is no known issue, right? So here like instead of unknown, what we are expecting to see here, and we would definitely see that, right, once machine is fully initialized, because it's still like machine is virtual machine is initialized. But here definitely we expect to see available option, right? Here means not any known Azure platform issuer. So here we'll see like one or two line messages here. So we'll be back to this page once like machine is successfully booted up, because still it is in the process of getting initialized. And you can see here is is just going up, saving network interface, right? So wait, and then next what? Reset user credential. Like, so in case if you want to reset, sometimes even this solve the problem. So you can reset user credential from the same tab, from the same page. Remember, like we just in the first step, like reset this RDP configuration. So on the same page, we get the option to reset VM password as well. So we can go here and even like we have this option reset password. So, and virtual machine must be running before Windows VM access. Yes, we know that it's still booting up, but from here we can perform both. So, in case if you want to do password reset or you want like reset config only, so we perform both from here, reset password, and then finally, what other options left? So last resort is obviously redeploy virtual machine, but before that restart VM and already is getting in its life. So there are like some like important steps here, and another important point to understand here is if my machine, my laptop is here behind my corporate firewall, my in-house on-prem firewall here, right, and then internet. And here, like in Azure portal, there is a virtual machine in Azure portal, and from here we want to take RDP of this virtual machine. And if your local firewall, your on-prem firewall, is not permitting RDP outbound, so obviously, like we cannot take RDP of this machine. So make sure that your like on-prem firewall, your enterprise corporate firewall, permitting RDP outbound. So that's another steps you need to follow in fact, right? So still if you are unable to take RDP of virtual machine, so don't forget to check like security rule on your local firewall, right? And if you are like a standalone user, home user, just connected internet with Wi-Fi router, so generally like there is no restriction because nowadays ISPs they do not restrict any traffic, right? So no problem whatsoever. But in corporate network, yes, like you need to be careful. And see here, like still is taking time. So once is like refresh this. So status is still stopped, and that is why we are unable to see like resource health option. But I hope you understand like what are different steps, how we can perform a very quick troubleshooting, right? So in case if your virtual machine is uh, not accessible via RDP, so what are different steps, how you can verify like the issue and how you can perform basic troubleshooting, right? So starting from your network, then network security group, routing, RDP connections, they are like play a very very important role. And network watch is a very good option, right? If you remember, so IP flow verify a very good option in fact. So we can do that. All right, so refresh one more time. Still, it is stopped. So I'm waiting this machine to be started, and then we can see like this resource health also, right? So I hope you now understand like what all troubleshooting steps you can follow at least for this like RDP connection, right? All right, so it's running now. So we can check now resource like health in fact. Yeah, done. So select virtual machine and go to like, help and then resource health here. So we are expecting here everything is in good shape, right? Available, and here we go, right? There aren't any known as O platform problems affecting this virtual machine. So it's very rare, like it's not very often you will find any issue with that, but that's on the way, in fact, right? Resource health. So total 80 steps, and here also I forgot to mention here like routing issue. So you need to check routing issue also, routing issues, right? And how we check? So IP flow verify, and you find this option in network watcher. Good so far. All right, so that's all for this like troubleshooting section.